I was sitting across from him in that leather chair in his attorney's office, the one that cost more than most people's monthly rent, watching him slide those divorce papers across the mahogany desk with that smug smile I had grown to know so well over 32 years of marriage, and I did something that made his attorney actually gasp out loud. I signed them, just like that. No fight, no tears, no begging him to reconsider, no dramatic speech about our decades together or the vows we made in that little church in Vermont where his mother cried through the entire ceremony. I picked up that Mont Blanc pen he was so proud of, the one he bought himself after closing his first major deal, and I signed my name on every single line they pointed to with a hand so steady you would have thought I was signing a grocery receipt. His attorney looked confused. His new wife, that 28-year-old personal trainer he had been parading around town for the past 18 months, like some kind of trophy he won at a carnival, she looked almost disappointed, like she had been hoping for a scene she could tell her friends about later over their overpriced cocktails and underdressed salads. But him, my soon-to-be ex-husband Richard, he looked absolutely triumphant, victorious. Like he had finally won the war he had been waging against me since the day he decided I was no longer useful to him, no longer young enough, thin enough, exciting enough, whatever enough to deserve his attention or respect, or even basic human decency. And I let him have that moment. I let him think he had won, because what none of them knew, what they could not possibly have anticipated in their arrogance and their greed and their absolute certainty that I was just a stupid, aging housewife who would crumble without him, is that I had been waiting for this exact moment for 7 months. 7 months since I found out what he had really done. 7 months since I discovered the truth that would destroy not just his new marriage, not just his reputation, not just his bank account, but his entire identity, everything he had built his pathetic sense of superiority on for 3 decades. And what I did next? The trap I had been setting piece by careful piece while he thought I was just crying into my pillow every night. It did not just give me my freedom. It gave me everything. His money, his precious reputation, his relationship with those children he claimed to love so much, his future with that girl young enough to be his daughter. I took it all. And the best part, the part that still makes me smile when I think about it on quiet mornings in my new home overlooking the ocean, the home I bought with money that used to be his, is that he handed it all to me himself. He walked right into every trap I set, smiled while doing it, and never saw it coming until it was far too late to do anything but watch his entire world collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started, to the moment everything I thought I knew about my life turned out to be a lie, built on top of another lie, built on top of betrayal so deep, it made me question whether anything in my entire adult life had ever been real. Before I tell you exactly how I made him pay for every single moment of suffering he caused me, if you love stories of women who refuse to stay down, who rise from the ashes stronger than ever, and serve justice so perfect it feels like divine intervention, subscribe right now and turn on all notifications, because what I did next will restore your faith that karma exists, and sometimes she just needs a little help from a woman who has finally had enough. This channel is dedicated to stories of mature women who stopped playing by rules designed to keep us powerless and started writing our own endings. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because what comes next in my story is just the beginning, and you will not want to miss a single twist of how I dismantled the life of a man who thought he could discard me like yesterday's newspaper. Now let me take you back 33 years to a version of myself I barely recognize anymore. I was 24 years old, fresh out of business school with honors, job offers from 3 different consulting firms in New York City, and a future so bright I needed sunglasses just to look at it. I had worked my way through college waiting tables and tutoring, graduated with a 3.9 GPA, spoke 3 languages fluently, and had already started building a network of mentors and contacts that would have taken me straight to the top of whatever field I chose. And then I met Richard at a friend's wedding. He was 31, charming in that confident way that comes from growing up with money and never hearing the word no, already making 6 figures at his father's investment firm, and he pursued me with the kind of focused intensity that made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. Within 6 months, we were engaged. Within a year, we were married. Within 2 years, I was pregnant with our first child, and my career, all those dreams and plans and possibilities, they went into a box I told myself I would open again someday when the kids were older, when things settled down, when the timing was right. That someday never came. By the time our daughter Emma was 2, I was pregnant with our son Michael, and Richard's career was taking off in ways that required a specific kind of wife. The kind who hosted perfect dinner parties for his clients and colleagues, who volunteered on the right charity boards, who made sure his shirts were pressed, and his favorite scotch was always stocked, and his mother's birthday was never forgotten. The kind who did not complain about canceled plans or missed anniversaries or coming home at 11 at night smelling like perfume that was not mine. I became that wife. I became her so completely that I forgot I had ever been anyone else. I woke up at 5:30 every morning to make breakfast for the family before Richard left for work and the kids left for school. I managed every single detail of our household, from the landscaping schedule to the quarterly deep cleans to remembering which of Richard's colleagues were allergic to shellfish. I organized our family vacations down to the minute, making sure everyone had exactly what they needed, while my own preferences never even entered the conversation. I turned down a part-time consulting offer when Emma was 5 because Richard said it would look like he could not provide for his family. I used my inheritance from my grandmother, $75,000 that was supposed to be my safety net, my just-in-case fund, to help Richard buy into a partnership at his firm when his father retired, because he said it was an investment in our future. I sat through countless dinners listening to him and his friends talk about business and politics and sports, while the wives were expected to smile and nod and maybe share recipes or decorating tips. I bit my tongue so many times I am surprised it is not permanently scarred. I made myself smaller and quieter and more agreeable year after year after year, and somewhere along the way I became invisible, not just to Richard, but to myself. I would catch my reflection sometimes in the bedroom mirror and not recognize the woman staring back at me. Where did she go? That 24-year-old with fire in her eyes and the whole world at her feet? When did I trade her in for this perfectly groomed, perfectly pleasant, perfectly hollow version of a human being whose entire existence revolved around making sure other people were comfortable and happy and successful while I disappeared a little more each day? The worst part is that I told myself I was choosing this, that I was sacrificing for love, for family, for a greater good, that my worth came from how well I supported Richard's dreams and raised our children and maintained our home and our reputation. And maybe for a while, in the early years when Richard still looked at me like I mattered, when he still asked about my day and remembered small details about my life, maybe it felt like a fair trade. But somewhere along the line, and I cannot tell you exactly when because it happened so gradually I did not notice until it was complete, I stopped being a person to him and became a function. I was not his wife. I was his household manager. I was not the mother of his children. I was their primary caretaker and his occasional backup when it made him look good. I was not his partner. I was his employee. Except employees get paid and get days off and get some measure of respect for the work they do. I got none of those things. What I got was taken for granted so thoroughly that when I did something extraordinary, like organizing a surprise 50th birthday party for him that took me 3 months to plan and included flying in friends from college he had not seen in 20 years, he thanked me the same way you might thank a waiter for refilling your water glass. Polite, distant, already thinking about something else. And the thing that kills me now, looking back with eyes that finally see clearly, is that I accepted this. I normalized it. I told myself that marriage was supposed to be hard, that men were not good at expressing emotion, that I was lucky to have financial security and healthy kids and a nice house in a good neighborhood. I gasped lid on the truth that I was desperately unhappy and profoundly lonely in a house full of people. I convinced myself that the hollowness I felt every single day was just what middle age felt like for women, that everyone felt this way, that I needed to be grateful for what I had instead of mourning what I lost. But I had qualities they never saw, strengths I had deliberately hidden because Richard's ego could not handle a wife who was smarter than him, or more capable, or more strategic. I could read people with terrifying accuracy. I could see patterns and connections others missed. I had a memory like a steel trap for details and conversations and promises made and broken. I had built relationships over decades with everyone from our accountant to our lawyer to the wives of Richard's business partners, relationships based on genuine care and interest that I never thought to weaponize because why would I? I loved my husband. I trusted my husband. I believed in the life we were building together. What a fool I was. What a blind, naive, trusting fool. But that was about to change in a way that would shock everyone who thought they knew me. most of all myself. It was a Tuesday morning in March, one of those gray, wet mornings where the rain is not quite rain, just this cold mist that gets into everything. Richard had left for work early, some meeting he claimed he could not miss, and the kids were both long gone. Emma to her job in Boston, and Michael to his senior year of college in California. I was alone in the house, which was not unusual, making my second cup of coffee and scrolling through emails on my phone when I saw it. An email notification from our health insurance company about a claim that had been processed. We had excellent insurance through Richard's firm, the kind where you barely notice the claims because everything is covered, so normally I would not have paid attention. But something about this one caught my eye. It was a claim for a fertility specialist, a very expensive fertility specialist in Manhattan, and it was dated from 2 weeks ago. My first thought, I am almost embarrassed to admit this now, was that there must be some mistake. Richard was 56 years old. We had not discussed having more children, obviously, and even if we had, which we absolutely had not, he would have mentioned going to a fertility specialist. My second thought, the one that made my coffee taste like acid in my mouth, was that he was not going for us. He was going with her, with Amber, the 28-year-old personal trainer with the Instagram following and the fake breasts and the way of touching his arm whenever she talked to him that made me want to vomit. I had known about Amber for about 18 months at that point. Not because Richard told me, of course not. I found out the way wives always find out, by accident, by paying attention to details that did not quite add up. Late nights at the gym that never resulted in any visible weight loss. New cologne I had not bought him. A sudden interest in music I had never heard him listen to in 3 decades. Text messages he answered immediately but then deleted. A distance in his eyes when he looked at me, like I was furniture he had grown tired of but could not be bothered to replace yet. I had confronted him about it once, about 6 months after I first suspected, and he had looked at me with such convincing shock and hurt that I was even suggesting such a thing that I apologized. I apologized to him for accusing him of cheating. I actually said the words "I am sorry" out loud, like I was the one who had done something wrong, and he had hugged me and told me I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things, that maybe I should talk to someone about my anxiety. He gaslit me so smoothly, so expertly, that I questioned my own sanity for months afterward. But now, staring at this insurance claim on my phone screen, standing in my kitchen in my bathrobe with my cold coffee and the gray rain outside, I was not questioning anything anymore. I was seeing with perfect, terrible clarity. He was not just having an affair with a woman young enough to be his daughter. He was planning a future with her, a future that included children. And the rage that rose up in me in that moment was not the hot, explosive kind that makes you scream and throw things. It was cold. It was calculating. It was the kind of rage that comes from 32 years of being taken for granted, talked down to, made to feel less than, made to feel invisible, made to feel like I should be grateful for scraps of attention from a man I had given my entire adult life to. I stood there in that kitchen, in the house I had turned into a home through thousands of hours of invisible labor, and I felt something fundamental shift inside me. That part of me that had been soft and accommodating and endlessly forgiving, that part died right there on the cold tile floor. And what rose up to replace it was someone Richard should have been terrified of all along. Someone who knew every single one of his secrets, every weakness, every lie, every vulnerability. Someone who had decades of intelligence and patience and strategic thinking that had been lying dormant, waiting for the exact right moment to be unleashed. Someone who was done protecting him from the consequences of his own actions. Someone who was about to teach him the most expensive lesson of his life. I did not confront him that day. I did not cry, though part of me wanted to. I did not call my sister or my best friend or anyone who might talk me out of what I was about to do. Instead, I did something I had never done in 32 years of marriage. I went through his things, methodically, carefully, like the lawyer I almost became before I gave up that dream to support his. I started with his home office, the room he always kept locked, the room I was not supposed to enter without permission like I was a child who might mess up his important papers. I had a key. I had always had a key. I had just never used it because I respected his privacy, respected his boundaries, respected him in ways he had never respected me. That day, respect went out the window. I picked that lock, which was easier than you would think with a bobby pin and about 30 seconds of effort, and I went through every single drawer, every file, every folder, every scrap of paper, and what I found was worse than I imagined. So much worse. There were printouts of fertility treatment plans, detailed, expensive plans involving IVF and egg donors and surrogacy options. There were emails between Richard and Amber discussing baby names. Baby names. He had never asked me for a divorce at that point. We were still married, still living in the same house, still attending the same social functions where he would put his hand on my lower back and smile at people like we were the perfect couple, and he was planning an entire second family behind my back, like I was already dead and buried. But that was not even the worst part. The worst part was the financial documents. Bank statements for accounts I did not know existed. Property deeds for a condo in Manhattan I had never heard of. Investment statements showing that he had been systematically moving our assets I had helped build through decades of unpaid labor and emotional support and my grandmother's inheritance money, into accounts that only had his name. He had been planning this for years, not months, years. He had been slowly, methodically stealing from me, from our marriage, from our family, while looking me in the eye every single day and lying with a smile. I took pictures of everything with my phone, every document, every email, every statement, every receipt. I photographed it all with shaking hands and a jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. And then I put everything back exactly where I found it. Exactly. Because I needed him to think I was still the stupid, trusting wife who did not ask questions. I needed him to keep feeling safe, keep feeling superior, keep underestimating me completely, because I had a plan forming in my mind, piece by piece, and it required him to have absolutely no idea what was coming. I made myself a third cup of coffee, even though I was shaking so hard from adrenaline I did not need caffeine, and I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and I started researching. I researched divorce lawyers, not the ones Richard knew, not the ones who played golf with him or went to the same club, but the ones with reputations for absolutely destroying unfaithful spouses in court. I researched forensic accountants who specialized in finding hidden assets. I researched private investigators who could document affairs with photographic evidence that would hold up in court. I researched New York State divorce law, which thankfully was not a no-fault state for people who could prove adultery and financial misconduct. I took notes. I made lists. I created a plan so detailed it would have impressed the business school professors who once told me I had a gift for strategic thinking. And then I did something that still makes me smile when I think about it. I created a fake email account. Nothing fancy, just a generic Gmail that could not be traced to me. And I sent an anonymous tip to the IRS about Richard's hidden accounts. Not enough to trigger an immediate audit, just enough to put him on a watch list, to plant a seed that would bloom into a very expensive problem for him at exactly the right time. That was April. I had 7 months until that scene in the lawyer's office. 7 months of the best acting performance of my life. During those 7 months, I played the perfect wife even better than I had for the previous 32 years. I smiled at Richard over breakfast. I asked about his day with genuine seeming interest. I laughed at his jokes that were not funny. I ironed his shirts even though we could afford a laundry service, and I had been begging him for years to just use one. I made his favorite meals. I attended his company functions in dresses he liked, standing next to him with a glass of white wine I barely touched, nodding at the right moments while his colleagues talked. I was so convincing that I almost convinced myself. But every single night, after he fell asleep or claimed he was working late, which I knew meant he was with her, I was working too. I was building my case. I met with Diane Rothstein, the best divorce attorney in the state, a woman with a reputation for leaving cheating husbands with nothing but their regrets and their therapist's phone number. I showed her everything I had found. She actually laughed when she saw the fertility clinic receipts. She said, "And I will never forget this, honey. He just handed you his balls on a silver platter. We are going to make him pay for every single sperm he was planning to use on that child." I hired Marcus Chen, a forensic accountant who had worked for the FBI before going private. He found accounts Richard had hidden in the Cayman Islands. He found shell corporations Richard had set up to hide income. He found that Richard had been lying on our taxes for years, which meant Richard was not just going to lose money in our divorce. He was going to face federal charges. I hired a private investigator named Sarah who looked like somebody's sweet grandmother, but had the instincts of a bloodhound and the moral flexibility of a person who had seen too much to be shocked by anything. She followed Richard and Amber for 6 weeks. She got photos of them coming out of the fertility clinic holding hands. She got photos of them at the condo I did not know about. She got photos of them at romantic restaurants where he told me he was working late. She got a recording, and this was the piece that made even my lawyer wince, of Richard telling Amber that he was going to divorce me as soon as he had all the assets secured in his name, that I was too stupid to notice what he was doing, that I would probably just accept whatever settlement he offered because I had no skills and no options and nowhere else to go. I listened to that recording exactly once, sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot, and I cried for 20 minutes straight. Not because I still loved him. I think I stopped loving him years before and just did not want to admit it. I cried because of the waste. 32 years of my life. 3 decades I had given to a man who saw me as nothing more than a convenient appliance that cooked his meals and raised his children and made him look good at parties. I cried for the woman I could have been, the career I could have had, the life I could have lived if I had not believed the lie that my value came from how well I served someone else. I cried until I had no tears left, and then I dried my face, fixed my makeup in the rearview mirror, went into that grocery store, and bought all the ingredients for Richard's favorite dinner, coq au vin, because I was not ready to show my hand yet. I needed him to keep thinking everything was fine, keep thinking I was oblivious, keep thinking he was in control. I needed him to file for divorce. I needed him to be the one who pulled the trigger, because in New York, the person who files first does not necessarily win, but the person who files first shows their cards first, and I wanted to see every single card in his hand before I laid down my royal flush. The divorce papers came in November, delivered to the house by a process server while Richard was at work, or supposedly at work. I knew he was actually at the condo with Amber because Sarah had texted me a photo of them having lunch together 20 minutes earlier. I opened that manila envelope standing in my foyer. The foyer I had decorated myself with furniture I had refinished and art I had collected over decades, and I read through the proposed settlement agreement. It was insulting. It was so insulting, it was almost funny. He was offering me the house, which sounded generous until you realized it came with a mortgage that was underwater and property taxes I could not afford on my own. He was offering me $20,000 a year in alimony for 5 years, which worked out to less than minimum wage when you calculated the hours I had worked as his unpaid household manager for 3 decades. He was keeping his retirement accounts, his investment accounts, his partnership in the firm, everything of real value. He was keeping everything and offering me just enough that he could tell people he had been fair, he had been generous, he had taken care of me even though the marriage just did not work out anymore. No hard feelings. These things happen. I called Diane immediately. I told her the papers had arrived. She said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, "Perfect. Do not sign anything. Let him think you are considering it. Let him think you might actually accept this garbage. We want him to feel confident. We want him to feel safe. We want him to have absolutely no idea that we have been building a case that is going to destroy him for 7 months. Are you ready for this? Once we start, there is no going back. He will lose everything. His money, his reputation, possibly his freedom depending on what the IRS finds. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. I thought about 32 years of being invisible. I thought about my inheritance money that went into his partnership. I thought about the career I sacrificed. I thought about the thousands of hours of unpaid labor. I thought about him calling me too stupid to notice he was robbing me blind. I thought about him planning babies with another woman while I was still sleeping in the same house. I thought about every single time I had made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. And I said, yes, I am sure. Burn it all down. And Diane laughed, the kind of laugh that probably terrified opposing counsel in courtrooms, and said, "Consider it done." We scheduled a meeting with Richard and his attorney for 2 weeks later. Diane told me not to bring anything, not to say anything, just to show up and follow her lead. She said the less I appeared to know or understand, the better. Let them think I was just a scared, confused housewife who did not understand legal terminology. Let them underestimate me one more time. It would make the reveal so much sweeter. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I had to sit across from Richard at dinner and make small talk. I had to sleep in the same house as him, though thankfully we had not shared a bedroom in over a year. He claimed he snored and did not want to keep me awake. I knew it was because he did not want me to notice when he snuck out at 2 in the morning to be with Amber. I had to pretend I was considering his insulting settlement offer, had to let him think he had won, had to watch him be extra nice to me in a way that was so transparently manipulative it made my skin crawl. He bought me flowers. He had not bought me flowers in probably 15 years. He complimented my cooking. He asked if I was okay, if I needed anything, like he was some kind of caring husband instead of a lying, cheating thief who was counting down the days until he could legally abandon me with nothing. And then came that Tuesday in November, the meeting in his attorney's office. I wore a simple dress, no makeup, my hair in a plain ponytail. I wanted to look as unthreatening and conventional as possible. Diane wore a power suit that probably cost more than Richard's monthly car payment and carried a briefcase that looked like it could hold nuclear launch codes. We walked into that conference room, and Richard was already there with his attorney, and this was the detail that made me want to laugh out loud, Amber. He had brought Amber to my divorce settlement meeting. She was sitting there in a tight dress that showed off the body she maintained through her job, smiling at me with this look of pity mixed with triumph, like she had won some kind of prize. Richard's attorney, a man named Bradley, something who had gone to law school with Richard and clearly thought this was going to be a simple, straightforward divorce between reasonable adults. He started talking. He walked me through the settlement offer. He used words like generous and fair and amicable. He talked about how Richard wanted to make sure I was taken care of, how Richard valued everything I had contributed to the marriage, how Richard hoped we could both move forward with respect and dignity. And the entire time he was talking, Diane was just sitting there, not saying a word, occasionally jotting down notes, with this small smile on her face that should have terrified everyone in that room, but nobody seemed to notice except me. When Bradley finished his speech about how generous Richard was being, there was this pause. Everyone looked at me, waiting for me to ask questions or get emotional or do whatever they expected a betrayed wife to do. And this was when I made my move. This was the moment I had been planning for 7 months. I looked at Diane. She nodded, and I picked up that Mont Blanc pen and I signed every single page they put in front of me without reading a single word. Richard looked shocked for about half a second, and then that smug smile spread across his face like oil on water. His attorney looked pleased. Amber looked disappointed she did not get her dramatic scene. And then Diane opened her briefcase. She pulled out a stack of documents about 3 inches thick. She placed them on the table with a sound like a judge's gavel, and she said, in a voice that could have frozen hell itself, "Now that my client has been gracious enough to sign your insulting joke of a settlement offer, let me show you what she is actually going to get." And she started laying out photographs. Richard and Amber at the fertility clinic, Richard and Amber at the condo, Richard and Amber at restaurants, financial statements showing hidden accounts, corporate documents showing shell companies, tax returns with highlighted sections showing fraud, email printouts where Richard discussed hiding assets and called me too stupid to notice, and then the piece that made Richard's face go from smug to gray in about 5 seconds. A letter from the IRS informing him that he was being audited and that preliminary findings suggested significant unreported income and potential criminal charges. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to stop here and talk to you directly, woman to woman. Have you ever given everything to someone who treated you like you were nothing? Have you ever looked in the mirror and barely recognized yourself because you had poured so much into others that nothing was left of who you used to be? Have you ever felt that specific exhaustion that comes not from working hard, but from loving people who do not love you back? If right now you are feeling that burn of recognition, that mix of rage and sadness, because you know exactly what I am talking about, because you have lived some version of this betrayal yourself, I want you to do something powerful right now. Write in the comments, "I choose myself from now on." Just those 6 words. This is not just a comment on a YouTube video. This is your declaration to yourself, to the universe, to everyone who has taken you for granted, that you are done being treated as disposable. When you write it, you are not just helping yourself. You are helping every other woman who desperately needs to know she is not alone and that she has the power to change her story starting right now. Write it. I choose myself from now on. Thank you for trusting me with that declaration. Now, let me show you what happened when I finally chose myself. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on that expensive carpet. Richard was staring at the photographs like he could make them disappear if he just looked hard enough. Amber had gone pale under her spray tan and was edging toward the door like she wanted to run. Bradley was flipping through the financial documents with hands that were starting to shake because he was realizing that he had just walked his client into a wood chipper. And Diane, beautiful, terrifying Diane, she was just smiling. She let the silence stretch for a good 30 seconds, let them all marinate in their panic, and then she started talking. She explained that my client, meaning me, had been aware of Richard's affair for 7 months. She explained that my client had documentation of every hidden asset, every lie, every instance of financial misconduct. She explained that my client had already filed complaints with the IRS, the State Bar Association since Richard had committed fraud using his law degree, and several other regulatory bodies. She explained that the settlement Richard had offered me was not just insulting, it was based on fraudulent financial disclosures, which meant Bradley could be disbarred for participating in it. And then she laid out what I was actually going to get. The house, with Richard paying off the entire mortgage immediately. 75% of all retirement accounts, all investment accounts, all hidden accounts, everything. This was possible because New York law allows for unequal distribution when one party has committed fraud and adultery. Alimony of $15,000 a month for the rest of my life, or until I remarried, which I had zero intention of ever doing. Full ownership of Richard's partnership stake in his firm, which I could either keep and collect distributions or sell back to the firm at fair market value, my choice. And here is the beautiful part, the part that made Richard actually moan out loud like he had been physically struck. I was getting the condo in Manhattan, the one he had bought for Amber, the one where he had been planning his new life. I was getting it, and Diane had already contacted a real estate agent about listing it for sale. All proceeds to me. Richard finally found his voice. He started sputtering something about how this was not fair, how I could not do this, how he would fight me. And Diane just looked at him with the expression you might give a cockroach you found in your kitchen and said, "You can fight if you want to. You can drag this out for years. You can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees. You can take your chances with a judge who will see all of this evidence of your fraud and your adultery and your cruelty. Or you can sign this agreement right now, today, and at least walk away with 25% of the assets and your freedom. Because if you do not sign, my next call is to the district attorney's office to discuss criminal charges for tax fraud, and then you will not be walking away with anything except maybe a prison sentence. Your choice. Make it now." I watched Richard's face cycle through about 15 different emotions in the span of 30 seconds. Rage, disbelief, panic, calculation, defeat. He looked at his attorney, who would not make eye contact with him. He looked at Amber, who was now actively crying and saying something about how this was not what she signed up for. He looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years, and I looked back at him with a face that showed absolutely nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no emotion at all, just cold, perfect indifference. And that, I think, is what broke him. Not the money he was losing, not the consequences he was facing, but the realization that I did not care anymore, that I had stopped caring months ago, that he no longer had any power over me emotionally, financially, or any other way. He was nothing to me. He was irrelevant, and he knew it. He signed. It took him 20 minutes and several whispered conversations with his attorney, but he signed every single page. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely write his name. When it was done, Diane collected all the documents, put them back in her briefcase, stood up, shook Bradley's hand with professional courtesy, and said, "Pleasure doing business with you, gentlemen. I hope we never see each other again." And then she looked at Amber, who was still crying in the corner, and said, "Honey, get a prenup. This one has expensive taste and no money anymore." And we walked out of that office with our heads high and our victory complete. I did not look back. I did not say goodbye to Richard. I did not acknowledge Amber. I just walked out of that building into the November sunshine, got into Diane's car, and the second the doors closed, I started laughing. I laughed until tears were streaming down my face. I laughed until my sides hurt. I laughed with the kind of joy and relief and pure, undiluted freedom that I had not felt in decades. Diane was laughing too. We sat in her car in that parking garage for probably 10 minutes just laughing like lunatics. And when we finally stopped, she looked at me and said, "You know what the best part is?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "He still does not know." I said, "Does not know what?" And she smiled this smile that was absolutely wicked and said he does not know about the vasectomy. And right here, let me tell you the part of this story that makes everything else look like child's play. Remember those fertility clinic receipts that started this whole thing? The ones that made me realize he was planning a future with Amber that included children? Well, I did some more digging after I found those. I contacted our old family doctor, the one we had used for 20 years before Richard switched to some fancy concierge practice in Manhattan. I asked to see Richard's medical records from 1995, and there it was, a vasectomy, performed in August of 1995, 6 months after our son Michael was born. Richard had gotten a vasectomy 30 years ago and never told me. We had discussed having a third child for years after Michael. I had wanted a third baby so badly. I had cried when month after month I did not get pregnant. I had gone to fertility specialists myself, had invasive tests done, had people poking and prodding me trying to figure out why I could not conceive, why my body was failing me. And the entire time, for years, Richard knew exactly why I was not getting pregnant, because he had made sure I could not, and he never said a word. He let me blame myself. He let me go through the pain and the medical procedures and the hormone treatments that made me sick. He let me believe my body was broken for years. And now, 3 decades later, he was taking this 28-year-old girl to fertility clinics, letting her believe they were going to have children together, probably planning to tell her the same lies he told me, that it was her fault, that her body was the problem. I had the medical records. I had proof. And I had given all of it to Diane with very specific instructions. 3 days after we signed the divorce agreement, Diane called me. She said I did what you asked. I sent the vasectomy records to Amber along with a note explaining what they meant and suggesting she might want to ask Richard why he was taking her to fertility clinics when he had been sterile for 30 years. I asked Diane if she thought Amber would leave him. Diane said, "Honey, I guarantee it." That girl did not sign up to be with a broke, disgraced, lying 56-year-old man with no money and no prospects. She signed up to be a trophy wife with a rich, successful older husband who was going to give her babies and financial security. You just took away the rich part, the successful part, and now the baby part. Give it 48 hours. She will be gone. Diane was right. 46 hours later, my daughter Emma called me, laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Mom," she said, "you have to see this. Amber just posted on Instagram that she is single and looking for a real man who knows how to treat a woman right. She is already back on dating apps. Dad is devastated. He called me crying, actually crying, saying Amber left him and took the ring he gave her and blocked his number. He wanted me to talk to her, to convince her to come back. I told him I did not have her number, and even if I did, I would not help him. Mom, what did you do to him?" And I said, "Sweetie, I did not do anything to him. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own actions." There was a pause, and then Emma said, "Good. He deserves it. What he did to you, what he put you through all these years. I saw it, Mom. I saw how he treated you. I saw how you made yourself smaller and smaller to make room for his ego. I am glad you finally fought back. I am proud of you." If you are absolutely gripped by this story, and you cannot wait to hear about what my life looks like now after escaping that prison I did not even know I was living in, make sure you are subscribed with all notifications turned on, because every single week I share stories of mature women who stopped playing nice and started playing smart, women who turned their pain into power, their betrayal into triumph, their invisibility into influence. This channel is your reminder that being over 45 does not mean being powerless. It actually means having decades of wisdom that younger people cannot match, patience that comes from experience, strategic thinking refined by years of navigating complex situations, and a level of "I do not give a single damn what anyone thinks anymore" that is absolutely liberating and terrifying to people who are used to controlling you. Every story I share here is about women who reached their breaking point and decided that breaking point would be everyone else's problem, not theirs. Women who stopped asking for respect and started demanding it. Women who realized they did not need permission to reclaim their lives. Subscribe right now, turn on that bell, because the women in this community do not just survive, we dominate. We do not just get even, we get ahead. And I promise you will want to be here next week when I share the story of a 59-year-old woman who discovered her husband had been secretly recording her therapy sessions to use against her in divorce court, and what she did when she found out will make my revenge look merciful. Hit subscribe now. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings, asset transfers, and watching Richard's world crumble in slow motion. The IRS audit turned up even more fraud than Marcus had initially found. Richard ended up owing over $2 million in back taxes and penalties. His partnership at the firm was dissolved by mutual agreement, which is corporate speak for they kicked him out before he could contaminate their reputation further. His name was in the legal journals, not for his brilliant career, but as a cautionary tale about what happens when you commit fraud. Several of his longtime clients left him. His country club membership was quietly not renewed. His mother stopped speaking to him when she found out what he had done to me, and that was particularly satisfying because that woman had never liked me, had always thought her precious son had married beneath him, and now even she could not defend his actions. I sold the condo in Manhattan for $1.2 million, all mine. I sold my partnership stake in his firm back to them for another $3.5 million, all mine. I paid off the mortgage on the house and then sold the house too, because I did not want to live in a space that held 32 years of memories I no longer wanted to keep. I made another $800,000 on that sale. I took all of that money, combined it with my divorce settlement, and I bought myself a small house overlooking the ocean in Maine. It is nothing fancy, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with windows that look out over the water, but it is mine. Every single inch of it is mine in a way that other house never was. I wake up when my body is ready, not when someone else needs something from me. I spend my days however I want. Some days I read 3 books in a row just because I can. Some days I take long walks on the beach and talk to absolutely no one. Some days I volunteer at the local women's shelter, helping other women who are trying to escape bad situations, sharing my story, showing them it is possible to start over even when you think it is too late. I started a small consulting business helping women over 50 navigate divorce, particularly high-asset divorces where the husband has been hiding money. I use all those skills I developed in business school 40 years ago, all that strategic thinking I had been forced to suppress for decades. I am good at it, really good at it. And it turns out there is a huge demand for someone who understands both the emotional and financial devastation of late-life divorce after a long marriage. I am making more money now than I ever did being Richard's wife, and it is money I earned through my own intelligence and hard work and expertise. It is mine in a way that nothing in my married life ever was. I have made new friends, real friends, women who see me for who I actually am instead of as Richard's wife or someone's mother. I have traveled to places I always wanted to see but never could, because Richard hated traveling unless it was for work or golf. I went to Italy by myself for 3 weeks and ate pasta and drank wine and walked through museums at my own pace without anyone rushing me or complaining that they were bored. I took a painting class and discovered I have a talent for watercolors. I started learning piano, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. I am dating, casually, nothing serious, but I am discovering what it feels like to be with men who actually listen when I talk, who ask about my day and mean it, who see me as a complete person with thoughts and dreams and value beyond what I can do for them. As for Richard, last I heard, and I only heard because Emma told me and I did not ask, he is living in a small apartment in New Jersey, working as a consultant for a firm that pays him a fraction of what he used to make, still dealing with legal issues from the tax fraud, and completely alone. Amber is long gone, married to a tech CEO she met 6 months after she left Richard. She is pregnant now, I heard, actually pregnant with a man who can actually give her children. Richard's son Michael barely speaks to him. Emma takes his calls out of obligation but keeps him at arm's length. He lost his family, his money, his reputation, his future, everything he valued in life. And the truly beautiful part, the part that gives me more satisfaction than any amount of money ever could, is that he did it to himself. Every single consequence he is facing now is the direct result of his own choices, his own lies, his own cruelty, his own greed. I did not destroy him. I just stopped protecting him from the destruction he was bringing on himself. I just stopped being the person who cleaned up his messes and covered for his mistakes and made excuses for his behavior. I stepped aside and let natural consequences happen. And they happened spectacularly. Do I think about him? Sometimes. but not with anger anymore. Not even with satisfaction, really. Mostly, I feel nothing. He is just someone I used to know. Someone who taught me an expensive but valuable lesson about my own worth and my own strength. He is irrelevant to my life now. He has no power over me. He cannot hurt me anymore because I do not care what he thinks or feels or does. He could call me tomorrow and beg for forgiveness, and it would mean absolutely nothing to me. That part of my life is over, completely, permanently, and I am so much happier without it that I cannot even articulate it properly. The woman I am now would not recognize the woman I was 3 years ago. That woman who apologized for taking up space, who made herself small, who believed her value came from how well she served others. She is gone, and I do not miss her at all. What I have now is better than anything I had in 32 years of marriage. I have freedom, real freedom, the freedom to be exactly who I am without apologizing for it, the freedom to say no without justifying it, the freedom to pursue my own interests and dreams without asking permission, the freedom to be selfish in the best possible way, to prioritize my own happiness and well-being without guilt, the freedom to wake up every single morning and know that my day belongs to me, my life belongs to me, my future belongs to me. If watching me take back my power and serve justice colder than ice gave you even a fraction of the satisfaction it gave me to actually live it, to watch Richard's face as he realized what I had done, to see him finally understand that actions have consequences, and you cannot treat people like garbage forever without it coming back to destroy you, hit that like button right now. Every single like tells YouTube's algorithm to show this story to more women who desperately need to know that betrayal does not have to be the end of your story. It can actually be the beginning of your power. Women who need to see that you do not have to just forgive and forget, and turn the other cheek when people destroy you. Like this video right now, because stories of women taking back their lives and refusing to be victims need to be seen by everyone, especially young women who think they have to accept disrespect to keep the peace. Like it now. Now let me talk directly to you, because this is important. If you are watching this video right now, and something in your gut is telling you that your situation is not right, that you are being taken advantage of or disrespected or taken for granted, I need you to understand something fundamental. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. You are not being too sensitive or too dramatic or too demanding. That voice inside you that says you deserve better, that voice is telling you the truth. Listen to it. Trust it. Stop explaining it away or making excuses for people who hurt you, or convincing yourself that things will get better if you just try harder or love more or sacrifice more. They will not get better. People who want to change will change. People who respect you will show you respect. People who value you will demonstrate your value through their actions, not just their words. And if the people in your life are not doing those things, if they are taking you for granted or treating you like you are disposable or making you feel small or invisible or worthless, then you do not have a communication problem or a misunderstanding problem. You have a them problem, and you cannot fix a them problem by changing yourself. You fix a them problem by removing them from your life. I know that is scary. I know it feels impossible, especially if you have been with someone for decades, especially if you have built your entire identity around being their wife or their mother or their caretaker. I know you are thinking, but I am 53 years old, or 58 or 62, and it is too late to start over. Nobody will want me. I do not have any skills. I do not have any money. I am too old to be alone. I know because I thought all of those things too, every single one. And they were all lies. Lies I told myself because I was scared. Lies other people told me because it served them to keep me scared and small and dependent. But they were lies. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are not without options. What you are is finally awake. And awake is dangerous to people who need you asleep. You are a woman with decades of experience, with knowledge, with skills you do not even recognize as skills, because you have been told for so long that what you do does not matter. You can read people. You can manage complex situations. You can organize and plan and execute. You can handle crisis. You can multitask. You can negotiate, even if you have only been negotiating with toddlers or teenagers or difficult relatives. Those are all valuable, marketable skills that translate directly into the professional world. You have decades of relationship building, networking, social intelligence that younger people simply do not have yet. You have patience and strategic thinking that comes only from lived experience. You have the superpower of not caring anymore what toxic people think of you, which is the most liberating force in the universe. You have been told you are powerless for so long that you started to believe it, but it was always a lie designed to keep you controllable. You have never been powerless. You have been deliberately suppressing your own power to make other people comfortable. And the moment you stop doing that, the moment you decide you are done making yourself small, everything changes. Not overnight, not magically. It took me 7 months of careful planning to escape my situation. It might take you longer. It might take you less time, but the timeline does not matter. What matters is the decision. The moment you decide you are done, you are already free. Everything after that is just logistics. And I promise you, if a 53-year-old woman who had not worked in decades, who thought she had no options, who was terrified of being alone, if I could completely rebuild my life and end up happier and more successful and more authentically myself than I ever was in 32 years of marriage, you can too. I am not special. I am not extraordinary. I am not unusually strong or brave or smart. I am just a woman who decided enough was enough. And if I can rise from complete betrayal and build something better, so can you. The only difference between me and you right now is that I already started, but you can start today, right now, this moment. The life you deserve is waiting for you on the other side of your fear of disappointing people who have never worried about disappointing you. If this story moved you, shook you, inspired you, or gave you ideas about your own situation and what you might be capable of, I need you to do 3 things right now before you click away. First, like this video. I am serious. Hit that thumbs up so the algorithm shows this to more women who need to see it. Women who are suffering in silence right now thinking they have no options, no power, no way out. Your like literally changes lives by making this discoverable. Second, subscribe and turn on all notifications. And I mean all notifications. Because next week, I am sharing the story of a 54-year-old grandmother who discovered her son-in-law had been systematically poisoning her daughter against her for 8 years, isolating her completely from her own mother while planning to steal her inheritance. And what this grandmother did when she found out will leave you speechless. It involves a fake illness, a secret recording device, and a family dinner that ended with police involvement. You will not want to miss it. And third, most important, comment below and tell me, what was the exact moment you realized you deserved better? What was the thing someone did or said that made you finally see clearly you were being taken advantage of? Because your story matters. Your voice matters. This community is here to remind you that you are never too old, never too late, never too far gone to completely rewrite your ending. Share your moment in the comments right now. I read every single one, and so do thousands of other women who come here looking for solidarity and strength. Do all 3 things now, and I will see you next week with another story of a woman who refused to stay down. Thank you for trusting me with your time today. Now go take back your power.